So today we're in lesson 10.2, which is called completing the square. Alright, please write this down. Today we're talking about completing the square, which is another method of factoring. Normally, when we factor, we use either the method that we talked about at the beginning of the year, which is the what two things multiplied together equals something and added together equals something else, or we use this new method, which is the square root property. It depends on the way that the equation is drawn up. So for example, if you have what do you do in this case? If you have x minus 2 squared equals 10.
You square it.
Yeah, you use the property, right? The property that's right there that tells you that this thing is positive, you're going to use the positive one, which is on top. U squared is going to be x minus 2 squared, and then d is going to be 10, so that means that your u is going to be x minus 2. So you end up with x minus 2 equals what? Square root of 10. Exactly. And? Exactly, Maria. Good. Negative square root of 10. We simplify. We go ahead and put this x equals 2 plus square root of 10. What does square root of 10 simplify into?
Nothing.
Nothing, right? Yeah. We said that it doesn't simplify into anything because the only two factors are 2 and 5, which are both prime numbers, right? So it just stays like that. We can't simplify further. What's square root of 8? 2 square root of 2. Good. And then we have x equals 2 minus square root of 10. Does everyone agree with this? Yes?
Yes, sir.
Yeah? Easy, right?
This was a good thing,
Yeah?
So
Not too bad, right? Yeah, still have to get your quiz.
Oh, did you grade our
Back
quizzes?
to you. No, I
What's
haven't.
the square root of 7? Where is the square root of 7?
No, it's prime.
So what would you do? Just leave it?
Nothing, you just leave it.
Okay, that's another quiz.
Good. Now let's talk about this. What about if you have an equation in this form, actually? What about an equation in this form? What are you going to do?
You have to do the thing you factor,
Yeah. What we say, what two things multiply together to equal C, added together to equal that. So we ask ourselves, what two things multiply together to equal negative 6 and added together to equal negative 4? Alex? Do you know?
Yes. Yes, I do. No. It is.
Oh, I know it. That's it?
Wait, it's
3 and 2?
4?
Yeah. Negative 3? No, negative 2 and positive
3 and 2?
Seriously, bro?
2 negative.
How is that possible?
What negative
Four?
Let's see, 3 times 2 is 6. No, anything?
No, it's.
No, I don't know.
Could it be possible that it's just nothing?
Yeah.
What was our
Serious?
answer? What was our answer before when we did it at the square root property? This right here is the quadratic form of the equation that we just saw. So that was 2 plus square root of 10, 2 minus square root of 10.
So-
That means it's going to be a decimal, right?
So it's nothing, we're good?
So we don't have a whole number factor for this equation, right? So we can't do this. So we have to do a different method. Okay?
No.
So that's all to show you guys that this will not be possible. You won't get two numbers that you can just do x minus whatever and x plus whatever and then factor them as we've been doing. Right now we're moving into more advanced quadratic equations where we're actually going to have decimals and fractions as our roots, okay? So that we can solve every equation, not just the ones that give you whole numbers, okay? So when you have an equation like that you cannot factor using the methods that we factored before, you need to bring in other methods. One of them is by using the quadratic formula, okay? Which I'll tell you guys right now. Who knows it?
James.
Huh?
A squared plus B squared.
Does anyone know it?
If you started, I could probably.
Negative b,
Oh, yeah, I know that one.
say it,
Square root, it's square root, negative b square root.
plus or minus the square root of b squared minus
C.
4,
It's all over 2a.
yes, 4ac all over 2a. Negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. If you do it to Pop Goes the Weasel, it's actually pretty easy. Negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Remember that? It helps. Okay, listen, this is one of those formulas for your quiz that we were supposed to have today, but we didn't get to on Friday, so we're gonna have this quiz on Friday. Okay, formula quiz. You're gonna need to know these, you're gonna need to know this, you're gonna need to know that square root of 8 is 2 square root of 2. These aren't formulas, they're just
Oh, you see, this is how bad, okay.
they're just ways, they're equations. Alright, but you do need to know this one. Super easy, guys. Memorize it because it will help you a lot. Okay? Especially on the SAT, even though all of you guys have already.
Except they give it to you on this.
They give it to you on the SAT. But then you have to flip back.
I'm
to see
thinking
if
it's
it's
just
time. Are you really? Huh?
We had to do that.
Not always, no. It's possible that they could give you a question about this. Okay? Memorize this video, memorize this. Alright, next. So, that's one way that you can solve when you can't factor evenly, right? Another way that you can solve is by completing the square. And there's a formula for completing the square that I'm going to write on the board. Now, you do not need to memorize this formula. But you do need to write it in your notes. Alex, Elias, Camilo, everyone needs to write this in their notes. B over 2. Write this down, write this down. Let's go. I'm gauging participation.
Wait, is it a B or a
It's B's. They're all B's. This is called the complete the square formula. Okay? All this says is that to complete the square, so sometimes you'll have a value written in a specific way. You'll have an x squared plus bx, and you won't be able to solve it correctly because you won't have a c term, so you can't use the factor form. Okay? So basically, huh?
That's what I'm wondering.
Yeah, this is it. You need to write that down. Okay? So all this is saying is that you'll just need to complete the square by using this property. Basically, you have this, you don't have a c term. You make your own c term by doing this, and it's going to equal this part right here. Now, when we do a problem, then it'll become easier to see. So, for example, if you have x squared minus 8x, okay? And you're just given that expression, okay? And I ask you, complete the square for that expression. What would you do?
Make a C
turn.
Make this
Okay, so up here your c term is b over 2 squared, right? All this is saying is that when you have x squared plus bx, you're just going to take that b value, you're going to divide it by 2, and you're going to square it to make your c term. And that's called completing the square. Okay? It's actually a lot easier than maybe other classes have made it out to be. I remember when I was in high school, I failed every single section about this because first of all, it's not really used that often. We're gonna learn it because it could be helpful to you if all else fails and you don't know what to do. Then you could do this. There are some completing the square problems on the SAT. Okay, it's not very high yield, but still. But all this is saying, take that b value, which is
8. So
8.
16.
-8, right?
Oh,
Because
negative.
it's plus, so then this would be -8. So -8 divided by 2 gives you
It's 4.
-4. And then
Negative
squared
4
would give you.
Oh, it's still 16.
16.
Oh,
So we have just completed the square, right? And made a quadratic expression that can then be used. Does that make sense?
yeah.
Super easy, right?
So far.
Okay? Now all this is saying is that when you have this, it's going to equal that. So it's going to equal x plus b over 2 squared. So
that's
it would
okay.
be x plus
-4.
-4, yeah. So x minus 4 squared. Does that make sense? Do these two things equal each other? If you were to FOIL this, would you get this?
Probably.
Yeah, right? Because you would get x times x is x squared. X times -4 would be -4. -4 times x would be -8. And then -4 times -4 would be 16. Does that make sense, guys? Any questions on this? Just completing the square is super easy, right? You take your b value, divide it by 2, square.
So you
I swear.
made up the 8 number, though, right? Like that was one of the.
Yeah. This is an equation given to us. Okay,
Like
so
the negative part of it.
we were given this, right? This is what we were given, and then we made
Yeah.
this out of
Cool.
this. Okay? Any questions? No?
No.
So we can use now this that we know to solve quadratic equations by completing the square. So for example, let's go to example 2 on page 628. Okay, so it's important to know that whenever you are working with equations, you have to follow the rules of algebra, correct? What are the rules of algebra? The two main rules of algebra that I told you guys at the beginning. Whatever you gotta go? Okay. Whatever you do to one side, you do to the other, right? And then basically to solve algebra, I made it an algebraic rule, is isolate the variable, right? If you remember those two things, you pretty much have algebra in the back. Okay? But we're gonna start with this one here, which is x squared plus 12x equals 0. Okay, what do we have here? We have an incomplete square. We say it's an incomplete square because it's not in the ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0 form. What are we missing? What value is missing up there? The c, right? Elias, we said that we can make a c easily, right? By using which formula?
The quadratic formula.
Not the quadratic. Completing the square. In fact, I'm going to write it down here because it's important that.
It literally
guys-
says it right there, completing the square, 10.2.
Okay, let's go ahead and let's write this down here. Okay, so, Hannah, what's my B value here?
12.
Up here.
Wait.
Hannah,
Oh.
Hannah, what's my B value? 12, exactly. So Hannah, according to this, how am I going to get my C? What do I need to do to my B value? Right here. Divide by 2. So what's 12 divided by 2? Exactly, it's going to be 6. And then, what else do I have to do? Square. What's 6 squared? 36. Okay, so this is going to be my value that I'm going to use to plug into C, right? So I can complete the square. So this is going to now be rewritten as x squared plus 12x plus what? 36. Equals 0, correct?
So we're gonna have to divide it by 2.
Equals 0? No? What's the rule of algebra? Whatever you do to one side, you do to the other. We added 36 on the left side, so what are we going to need to do?
Add it to the.
Add it to the right side as well.
That's crazy.
Okay, now we have a completed square value.
Well, why don't we divide it like these, like apples?
What?
What do you mean?
There, cause you know how the.
Oh yeah, he says, why don't we plug in an x plus b squared, like in the formula?
And then, like.
An x plus, what do you
So
say?
why don't we do
The second part, yeah,
the
that
second
part.
part.
Yeah, we're gonna do that right now, okay? Well, basically, this isn't saying that you turn a 0 into that, okay? This is just saying that when you have this form here, so right now we're gonna kind of ignore this, okay? Just kind of ignore it for now, okay? All this is saying is that when you have this form, the x squared plus bx plus b over 2 squared, it's gonna equal this. So let's turn this part now and make it look like this, right? Because we completed the square. So we're gonna now change this into an x plus b over 2 squared form. What do we get? What's our x plus b over 2 squared form?
X, right?
X?
Does that be squared or no?
No, like this is gonna become a factored form, if that makes sense.
Okay. So we just put x plus 12 over 2.
Which is?
So divided by 2 is 6.
Okay, but let's just write out the whole thing. Squared, right? So that's actually gonna be, I'll write it in.
Wait, what just happened?
We turn this
Okay,
into
that I
this.
got. Oh,
And now we're gonna turn it into,
why is it 6 and not 2?
oh my bad,
Okay, I was confused.
x plus 6 squared. Okay, now this is gonna, now we bring the 36 back, that's gonna equal 36.
And that's the final answer. There you
And
go.
then this is your answer.
Yeah.
This is completing the square, that's what that's called. Now have we solved for x yet?
No. Do
We haven't solved for x yet, right? Have we?
No.
No,
So we
but
have the
we've
square.
completed the square.
Oh, that's
Okay.
it? That's what we do?
We've completed the square. But now let's go ahead and let's solve for x. So you guys understand this part so far, right? We're
Yeah.
just, no? Yeah, we're just rewriting, guys, listen. We're rewriting this, right? Completing the square by adding a c value.
Yeah.
Once we add the c value, then we realize that this x squared plus bx plus c actually equals x plus b over 2 squared. So we rewrote this as this, and we made it equal again to what it was equal to.
36 just stays on the other side.
36 just stays there. Okay,
So we
now,
just square it, right?
square what?
The whole thing.
If you square this, you're gonna get back to this,
You are.
right? Okay, so we're not trying to square now we're trying to solve. To solve, we need to factor, correct? If we're gonna solve for this, what does that look like? The top one, right? The square root property?
I think that's what Elias meant.
That's what I meant.
That's what you meant?
Yeah,
Okay,
like
good.
take away the parentheses of the square, the x plus 6 equals square root of 36,
X plus 6
which is 6.
squared equals 36, right? I'm gonna write it up here on top.
Yeah, x equals 0.
Okay, wait, so
X
what
equals 0.
What does this look like? It looks like this one, right? So we're gonna get, if our u squared is x plus 6 squared, then our u is gonna be x plus 6, right? Equals
six.
square root of 36.
And do the x plus 6 equals the negative square root of 36.
There we go,
X equals 12 and x equals 0.
right? Simplify that. Now you have x plus 6 equals 6. X plus 6 equals negative 6.
So we just add 6 to the side.
Subtract 6 from
Oh, I
both
mean,
sides,
I mean,
right?
subtract,
X
I mean,
equals
subtract.
0.
So x will equal 0, and x will equal
Negative 12.
negative 12. Now have we solved?
Yes.
Yes.
Now we're done.
Our original equation was a squared, which means that we have an x squared value. How many answers are we gonna have?
2.
2, right? Do we have 2 answers?
Yes.
Are we done?
Yes.
Good, we're done. Okay,
How would you know
so that was the first one.
Oh,
This is when the leading coefficient is 1. We're only gonna do today when the leading coefficient is 1. So we're gonna do one more question together. Completing the square. And I'll I'll go ahead and I'll write it up, and I want you guys to try it on your notes, okay? And the
Wait.
video also, try it in your notes.
This is a new one or is
This is a new problem,
Or like-
example 3.
a different type? Or the same type?
No, same type.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so to start off, what form is it? It's in the ax squared plus bx plus c form, right? But if we try to factor this, are we going to be able to?
No.
Yes.
No.
Let's see. What two things multiplied together equals 7? Just
No,
1 and 7.
yeah,
They're
one
the
and
only
seven.
two things, right? Would it give us that? Negative 7 plus 1, would it?
No.
Yes.
Yes.
It would. It would. Okay, but we're not going to use it by completing the square, okay? So we could, and then this is why completing the square is kind of just like a off to the side topic. We don't really use it that
Well,
much.
it wouldn't
It
equal
wouldn't
6.
equal -6.
No,
wouldn't
because
equal
the negatives don't match up, because if you do negative 7 times 1, it gives you negative,
Right.
right? So it don't match up.
So I was right. No, you were just stupid. I was right.
Good job. Good
I
job.
was
Yes.
right. It doesn't
I meant
work.
to trick you guys.
You see, I
Okay.
do it.
So we can't solve it by regular factoring, which means we're gonna need to complete the square, which means that we need to put it into the incomplete square form, which means we need to get rid of our c value, okay? To get rid of our c value, we're gonna subtract it from both sides. Now we have x squared minus 6x equals negative 7. This is not in our standard, guys, listen, this is not in our standard quadratic form, right? But we can complete the square now, correct? How do we complete the square?
X plus -6 and do parentheses.
So your b value is negative 6.
-6 divided by
So
2.
negative 6 divided by 2 squared gives you, so negative 3 times negative 3 gives you, 9. Right? So we're going to rewrite now, and we have x squared minus 6x plus 9 equals negative 7, but
You have to do the same thing on both sides.
whatever you do to one side, you added 9 here, you're going to have to add 9 here.
Okay. So then it's just 2.
So what do we get? We get x squared minus 6x plus 9 equals
2.
2. Now can we factor this?
Yeah.
Not yet.
No,
It's not in the ax squared plus bx plus c form. But how can we get it like that? What can we do? Yeah,
Yeah.
we change this side to look like this. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. I'm erasing the top. So we change now this side to make it look like this, right? We completed the square, so we don't even have to like check it, right? We just write x plus b over 2.
-6.
What's b over 2?
-6 over 2.
Negative 6 over 2, which is negative 3. Negative 3 squared, right? And if we try it, x times x is that, x times negative 3 is negative 3, negative 3 times x is negative 3, which makes negative 6x, negative 3 times negative 3 is 9, right? If we were to FOIL this, we would get this. So we have this factored form now, and we make it equal to 2. Now can we solve this?
Yes.
What does it look like? The top or the bottom one? The top, right? Because it's positive. So since it's positive, we're going to go ahead and solve. Our u squared is x minus 3 squared, which means you have x minus 3 equals square root of 2. And you have x minus 3 equals negative square root of 2. What do we get?
I got x equals from the first one, x equals the square root of 2 plus 3.
Good. So sometimes if our constant value is going to be positive, we write it first. So x equals 3 plus square root of 2. What's the square root of 2? It's a prime number, right? So you just leave it like that. You can't simplify it. X equals 3 minus the square root of 2 It was originally a squared problem, which means it was to the degree of 2, which means you're gonna have 2 answers. Do we get our 2 answers?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yes, so we are done.
Amen.
Any questions?
No.
All right.
It's just a long process, bro.